everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Another Turnover, the basketball podcast where a basketball fan with no basketball credibility gives his opinions on what's going on in the NBA. Opinions that nobody asked for. As always, I'm your host, Mr. Chris Aaron Murphy, aka Aaron. And ladies and gentlemen, let's just jump right into it. Folks, we're back. Season 6, Episode 10. Please forgive me. Was supposed to get a show out, last Friday, which would have been the 15th, if I'm not mistaken, if I got my dates right. But we are here doing a show today on a Monday. Going to be recording on Monday and posting on Monday. Who would have thought? But of course, like I said, this is season 6, episode 10. We are now in double digits, but this is the 103rd episode overall of Another Turnover. So we are rocking and rolling, but plenty to talk about today. We're going to talk about the NBA All-Star starters that have been announced today. Jalen Williams, J-Dub for the Oklahoma City Thunder, unfortunately is injured and he will be out for the foreseeable future. So we're going to talk about the implications of that. And then we'll get into a little bit of, trade rumors and trade buzz that has been going around in the league. But before we get started, it is January 19th, the third Monday in January, so we have to give a major shout out to civil rights activist, the legendary Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I mean, if you live in the United States, you know that today is Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day, so this is the day that we take time to reflect and celebrate the life of a man who made generational impact in this country and probably could be argued in the entire world. So if not for the efforts of Dr. King, black and brown folks like myself would not have the civil and voting rights that we have in the United States today. So got to give a big shout out to the Reverend Dr. King. But some of my favorite quotes of Dr. King, there's a ton, but I had just a couple here. One I posted on my Instagram story today. He said, "If you can't fly, run. If you can't walk, if you can't run, walk. If you can't walk, crawl. But by all means, keep moving." And then another quote was, "He who passively accepts evil is as much involved in it as he who helps perpetrate it." He who accepts evil without protesting against it is really cooperating with it. So one of the greatest, like I said, leaders that we have ever seen in the United States. So got to give a major shout out to the late, great Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. So go out and celebrate today. Read some of his quotes. I'm sure there's plenty of marches going around in his honor, but for all of the wonderful things that he did, Dr. King, thank you very, very much. But like I said, let's just jump right into it. So let's talk about the NBA All-Star starters that were announced today. So the first 10 All-Star participants have been announced. Now, if you remember, slight format change for this year's NBA All-Star game, or I guess major change, if however you want to look at it. But there's still going to be 24 All-Stars total, but there will be 3 teams of 8 players each in what will now be a United States versus world format. So you'll have 2 USA teams, and then you'll have 1 world team. So the starters, if you keep up with NBA news and whatnot, starters are chosen by a combination of fan votes. Then you've got media that votes, and then you have the players that vote as well. So in terms of the guards from the Eastern Conference, you've got Jalen Brunson, New York Knicks guard, and then you got Cade Cunningham from the Detroit Pistons, and then you have Jaylen Brown from the Boston Celtics. So well deserved for those 3, at least I would say. And then, I'm missing Tyrese Maxey from the Philadelphia 76ers. And then you have forward from the Eastern Conference as well, Giannis Antetokounmpo, of course, from the Milwaukee Bucks. So that make up your 5 players from the East for starters. And then you have, in the West, you've got Luka Doncic from the Los Angeles Lakers, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander from the Oklahoma City Thunder, and, of course, Stephen Curry, guard from the Golden State Warriors. And then you've got your front court players. You got Victor Wembanyama from the San Antonio Spurs, and Nikola Jokic from the Denver Nuggets. So those are your 10 players that will be considered starters. Like I said, there's going to be 3 teams of 8 each. So there's technically some starters still, to be announced because there's going to be, 3 teams total. But for starters, I'm not really upset about this. I mean, Luka Doncic and Giannis Antetokounmpo each led their respective conferences, so the West and the East, in terms of overall votes. So, I mean, they had to be starters. And, of course, I mean, their play justifies it as well. They're both MVP caliber players, so you knew, I mean, them being a starter is pretty much no-brainer, at least in my opinion. But Jaylen Brown from the Boston Celtics, he's also had a phenomenal year. Definitely not mad at it. Of course, I'm biased because I am, Boston Celtics are my favorite Eastern Conference team, my second favorite team. But he's had a phenomenal year so far. And so has my boy Victor Wembanyama. I know he's missed some time, but I'm not surprised that either one of them were named starters as well. And then, I mean, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Nikola Jokic, no surprises there, right? So they've been playing very well this season. Nikola Jokic has obviously been out with a hyperextended knee, but he should be coming back relatively soon, if I'm not mistaken. But those are your 10 members of the All-Star game so far in terms of people who will start the game for their respective teams. We should know the remaining, All-Star members more than likely before the end of the month or the beginning of next month, because the All-Star game is February 15th, takes place a week after the Super Bowl in the NFL. But, I do hope that this United States versus world format change, I hope the games are a bit more competitive. I mean, in my opinion, it's not reasonable for players to go 100% full speed like they do in a game. I mean, technically the All-Star game doesn't count for season statistics. It doesn't count for, standings or anything like that. It is a glorified pickup game. But that being the case, I mean, at least give the same effort that you do in practice. I mean, I'm sure, when those guys practice, they're going pretty hard, but probably not 100% game speed. And then, these guys, they are always, in the summer, they're always posting, highlights of them playing summer pickup. So at least just, play as hard as you do in pickup, at least during the summer. No one, of course, wants to get out there and get hurt during the All-Star game. We all get that. I don't think anybody is really knocking, players for that. But, at least give the fans something to be happy with in terms of the product that is out there. Like, we want to see you give some effort. I remember one year Steph Curry, Giannis was coming down with the ball and Steph Curry, laid down and Giannis completely jumped over him as Steph Curry was laying down on the ground. We don't want to see that. We, at least attempt to try to stop him. But hopefully this USA versus world, dynamic creates a little bit more competition or a competitive environment for the NBA All-Star game. I mean, most of the time, fourth quarter hits, there's a little more defense because, okay, those guys are all competitive. They want to win. So hopefully we just see that throughout the course of the entire games. But only time will tell. Less than a month will tell. We'll see what ends up happening. But, additionally, in regards to the All-Star game, I was reading, through different articles, putting my notes together for the show. There was an ESPN article that discussed that, if LeBron James should be a part of the All-Star game in his 23rd season. And in my quick opinion, of course, absolutely. I mean, even at 41 years old, LeBron James is putting up 22.5 points, 6 rebounds per game, and 7 assists per game. So, in my opinion, those are all-star caliber numbers. I mean, LeBron, with him still putting up numbers like this, I think he's a lock for the all-star team. I mean, he's definitely going to make it. He's, I think, still easily one of the best 24 players in the NBA. I mean, of course, he's getting older. He doesn't have the same amount of burst or, quickness or agility that he used to, but he's 41 and still putting up 22.5, 6, and 7. So I definitely think that LeBron James will be an all-star, more than likely. Probably not a starter, but he's going to be on the team. I mean, this is his 23rd season. Could be his last all-star game. We don't know. Nothing has been said about him retiring this year, but it is a possibility this could be his last All-Star game. But we shall see. we shall see what ends up happening, but I think he'll definitely make the team. But so let's transition here. Second segment, that I got for us is just basically talking about a significant injury in Jalen Williams for the Oklahoma City Thunder. So second best player on the defending champion Oklahoma City Thunder, fortunately, is dealing with a right hamstring strain and will be out at least a few weeks. Now, when I was doing my research for the show, there was one person, I think it was on Twitter, that I saw that they basically said that this is the same injury that De'Aaron Fox had late last year for the San Antonio Spurs, and that essentially kept him out for the last, I think 2 months of the season. Now, granted, the Spurs weren't in position to make a deep run in the playoffs or potentially even be a play-in team next year. So, De'Aaron Fox probably could have come back before the end of the season, but hamstring, nothing to play around with. It has to, take time to heal and all of that good stuff. But, the reports are saying that Jalen Williams will be reevaluated in a few weeks, meaning he'll be out not playing at least for the next few weeks. So, obviously this is going to be quite the blow for the Oklahoma City Thunder, as he is averaging 17 points per game, 5 rebounds per game, 5 assists per game. But he was out earlier in the year. So if you remember, he was recovering from wrist surgery that he had, and he didn't play the first, 25 games of the season. So during that stretch while he was out, Oklahoma City, they stepped up. They were, playing well. I think they went 24-1 or 25-1 before he came back. Excuse me. But so they do have some experience playing without Jalen Williams. But, with the Oklahoma City Thunder's recent struggles, I'm sure this comes at a pretty unfortunate time for them. Over the next couple weeks, they do have some Western Conference, I would say, heavyweights that they have to go up against. They've got San Antonio again for the 5th time this season, but they finally beat San Antonio, Oklahoma City, that is, I think last week, if I'm not mistaken. But then they've got Houston coming up. They've got Minnesota. So all, tough Western Conference teams. So obviously not having your your second best player, it's definitely going to, make an impact. So I'm sure, though, at the end of the day, they're going to take their time bringing him back. I think Oklahoma City I know they're number 1 in the Western Conference, still the best record in the NBA overall. And I think they're 5 or 6 games ahead of the San Antonio Spurs in the second spot. So I'm sure they're probably going to take their time, with him coming back. They'll, of course, want Jalen Williams, as well as obviously the rest of their players, all healthy going into the playoffs, talking 100% ready to go for playoff basketball, because I'm sure that they are expecting another deep run in this year's playoffs. But we're essentially halfway through the season, so there's plenty of basketball to be played. So I'm sure they will definitely not try to rush Jalen Williams back before he is really ready to go. But let's transition one more time. Let's talk about the latest trade rumors going around the association. So I think I mentioned it earlier, but the trade deadline is fast approaching. It is February 5th, so we only got a few more weeks until teams are able to make trades for the season after February 5th. No more trades until the offseason. So, of course, we talked about last week, the Trae Young trade so far has been the biggest one of the season. There are some, rumors circulating, though, of some other high-profile names that could be on the move. So I wanted to talk about that just a little bit. But, doing my research for the show this week, there are multiple reports that the Mavericks could be shopping none other than big man Anthony Davis. Less than a year after the blockbuster Luka Doncic trade, it is a possibility that the Mavericks trade the guy that they got back for him. So I don't want to open up this can of worms, because we talked about this pretty extensively, I think, on multiple episodes. But the fact that you traded away Luka Doncic to get Anthony Davis, who is also an all-star talent. I'm not trying to be disrespectful to Anthony Davis, but it hasn't worked out like you thought. So you're contemplating trading Anthony Davis less than a year into his tenure with the team. What is going on with this Mavericks front office? If you were going to give up that fast, why did you trade Luka Doncic in the first place? Or better yet, why didn't you shop around with other teams, with multiple teams, to see what you could get for Luka Doncic? Like I've talked about on multiple episodes before, there are probably every single team in the NBA, with the exception of maybe one or two, probably would have given Oklahoma City anything they wanted to get Luka Doncic on their roster. So, like I said, not going to get into this too deeply, not going to open up this can of worms, but I think this Mavericks front office is just wild. So, possibility that Anthony Davis could be moved for the deadline. When I was reading the article, they said it's also a possibility that they just wait until the offseason. He is dealing with a hand issue, like I think a fracture in his hand, unfortunately. So get well soon, AD. But originally, a report came out he was going to need surgery. And he was going to be out at least a few months. But then he got a second opinion, and now he might only be out up to like 6 weeks. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, this Mavericks front office team is just wild. But another potentially significant trade could be coming out of San Francisco. Golden State Warriors Jonathan Kuminga has reportedly demanded a trade away from the Warriors, according to ESPN's Shams Charania. So I'm just going to read the article super quick here and read parts of the article. It says, on the first day that he became eligible to be moved, fifth-year forward Jonathan Kuminga demanded a trade away from the Golden State Warriors, league sources told ESPN. So Kuminga could not be traded until Thursday, so this would have been this past Thursday, according to the terms of his contract. And like I said, the trade deadline is February 5th. Article basically talks about how Kuminga's roller coaster tenure with the Warriors is pretty much at its lowest point. He started the first 12 games of the season this year. Coach Kerr called him a pretty secure starter, but then he had some struggles and got demoted, and that he hasn't just really taken it well. Has not seen the floor in the last 13 games, basically at the end of the rotation. And Kuminga had ruled himself out of one game on January 2nd with back soreness basically an hour before the game. So basically telling him, hey, I can't go. So, the article talks about team sources said that essentially every major figure on the ground level of the operation, most notably Kuminga, Kerr, and the veterans, watching a $22.5 million player sit on the bench while the team is stuck in a mediocre state, as Jimmy Butler called it, agreed that the best resolution is to trade Kuminga prior to the deadline. And Steve Kerr was quoted as saying, I'm disappointed for him, Kuminga, that things didn't continue to go the way they did in the first couple weeks of the season. So, reports have been coming out for a long time that Jonathan Kuminga has not been happy playing for Golden State. There's been reports saying he's been frustrated with his playing time, how he's being utilized, among a number of issues. So I definitely think it's probably time for these two parties to just part ways, for lack of a better term. It wouldn't necessarily be major news if Kuminga got traded, because this has been, like I said, talked about for a while, and he's not an all-star caliber player. At least for Golden State, he hasn't been. Who knows? Maybe he could be somewhere else. But it is significant enough, in my opinion, if he does get moved, because this would be another young player that the Warriors, unfortunately, weren't able to develop and, kind of transition to the next generation. But that's a whole story for another day and another podcast. But Jonathan Kuminga potentially getting traded from the Golden State Warriors. I definitely would be surprised if he did not get traded before the deadline. But some other trade rumors and buzz here. Of course, we've got John Morant, we talked about, I think, last week or the week before last. We've also talked about Giannis Antetokounmpo. I've got the article pulled up here just on, some things that could happen. Like I said, Antetokounmpo and the Bucks, he potentially could be on the move. Jonathan Kuminga. The Lakers are potentially, weighing their options. I have a quote here from, I want to make sure I quote him properly. Where's his name? Oh, Brian Windhorst from ESPN basically talked about how the Lakers are going to be looking for some bargain deals. They might be able to find one if they're willing to take on some long-term money, but they probably need to make sure that a player is a good fit with Luka to justify taking on a long-term contract. So definitely if some potential moves. Like I said, the biggest trade so far was with Trae Young. But I mean, if Giannis gets moved, Ja Morant gets moved, I would argue that those would be bigger situations. And we'll definitely be talking about those if they come to fruition before that February 5th trade deadline. But ladies and gentlemen, that is all the show I have for you fine folks today. As I always say, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. If you could do all the good things like share, subscribe, leave a comment, I would greatly appreciate it. You know, it's crazy to think that we are basically halfway through the season. Most teams have played either 40 or 41 games as of the time of recording, but still a long way to go. Still half the season left, but before you know it, we'll be in the postseason. I mean, blink and you miss it, the postseason will be here. So I'm looking forward to the latter half of the NBA season, looking forward to the latter half of another turnover, and just continue to watch my San Antonio Spurs put in work. I mean, as the second best team in the Western Conference, I didn't think, I mean, they're overachieving in my opinion. I was hoping that they, at least made the playoffs, won one playoff series, but I mean, as it stands right now, depending on matchups, how we're looking, you know, we might be looking for a deep playoff run, but I don't want to get my hopes up. But like I said, do all the good things, like, share, subscribe, leave comments. I greatly appreciate it. Hope you have a wonderful week, and I will see you next week. Peace.